So I saw Mutiny today, and I have to say, if I had a nickel for every time I went to see a Jason Statham movie because of the T-Mobile coupon, I'd have 10 cents. Insert the rest of the quote here. Now, as for the usual seizure warnings that I like to give to my reviews, fortunately, there actually was a seizure warning included ahead of this film. I don't know if it's something that the studio specifically put in or if it's something specific to the theater chain, but this does have some sequences with some flashing lights and some low lighting that may pose a risk to those with photosensitive epilepsy. So good on either the studio or the theater for actually warning their viewers about this. Now they just need to make sure that they can actually put that warning ahead of when people can purchase tickets instead of when you're already in the theater. But hey, good on them for actually, doing the right thing. Now, as for my thoughts on this film, I get the feeling Jason Statham might become the patron saint of the T-Mobile Tuesdays coupon, because this is the second time in recent history where I've watched a Jason Statham film solely because of the T-Mobile Tuesdays $5 coupon. And honestly, when it comes to this film as a whole, if you go into this expecting a Jason Statham action movie, that's exactly what you're going to get, for better and for worse. And honestly, I would say the biggest problem with this film is that there are glimmers of good ideas here, but it very much is a film that couldn't really decide what type of story it was wanting to tell, because the setup of it makes you think you're about to watch some sort of a high-octane thriller that's more about corporate espionage. But then it just completely abandons that story and essentially becomes Die Hard on a boat. And honestly, you can tell that they had set pieces that they planned out. You can tell they had sequences that they really wanted in this film, but then just had to kind of Frankenstein multiple scripts around it to justify having those set pieces. And it would be one thing if those set pieces were actually good. Like, there were good ideas, some really cool moments that probably would have looked a hell of a lot better if we could actually see them, because this film makes the same mistake that a lot of Western action films make, where the camera is zoomed in real tight, it's cut really quick, it doesn't let the action breathe. And another thing that bothers me, and I think this is just a problem I've been noticing with a lot of action films in recent history, is that human trafficking has just become this shorthand that writers and directors are relying upon to convey that these are the bad guys. Granted, this is nothing new. Back during the 80s, it was drugs, and so human trafficking has kind of become the bad guy action du jour to communicate of, oh, these are really awful people that you don't have to feel bad for when they get killed. And I personally don't really like that, because I feel like it trivializes the actual harm human trafficking causes. That's a whole separate rant for a whole nother video. It's just, you can tell the way it was implemented here was just implemented as a MacGuffin rather than actually an actual core part of the story. And that bothered me a little, because honestly, looking at the way this film plays out, the story beats and everything, despite some very interesting shots here and there and some very interesting moments here and there, if I had to summarize Mutiny in a sentence, I would simply describe it as, we have the Furious at home. Because honestly, a lot of the beats on a lot of the premise is stuff you've seen executed in a much more compelling way in other films like The Furious. So yeah, if I'd paid full price to see this film, I probably would be really upset. And it's a real shame. There were glimmers of good ideas here. There were glimmers of a good film here. It just needed to decide what type of story it wanted to tell. And if it wanted to be Die Hard on a boat, it should have just been Die Hard on a boat, instead of trying to have both Die Hard on a boat mixed with this corporate espionage subplot that it marketed as the main plot. Because honestly, the ideas don't really gel together in a way that feels organic or natural. It just basically feels like they took two different drafts from two different screenplays and tried to stitch them together to justify the set pieces that they really, really wanted to get into the film. That's honestly the best way I can summarize it, and it's a shame because there are some okay action sequences here, but again, the film makes the same mistake that a lot of Western action films make, where it's zoomed in, there's quick cutting, it doesn't really let you see what's going on. Now, some of the sequences that are in the close quarters, that are in like the tight, narrow alleyways, those are actually shot and choreographed fairly well, and showed, okay, this is actually a cool way of making use of the limited space to show this action. Problem is that those moments tend to be few and far between, and some of the really larger action set pieces, again, are hampered by the editing and the cinematography. It just doesn't really work with what they were trying to do. And it also has a lot of the same dialogue cliches. It very much is your stereotypical Jason Statham action movie. Now, again, Jason Statham, perfectly capable performer, And it's clear he understands his brand and is sticking to it. I don't fault him for that. That's just the nature of the industry. It's just definitely one of those films that's just kind of there. If you're a fan of Jason Statham, if you go in with the mindset of this is just another typical Jason Statham action film, you'll get exactly what you paid for. But I think there's a reason that they decided to go with the T-Mobile coupon this week. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Mutiny. If you've seen the film, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments below. But now, if you excuse me, it is really hot in this car, so I should probably get home.